So welcome. It's committee of the whole meeting. It's November 13th. Sorry, I almost said December because I heard Christmas music on the radio on the way here.
Really?
99.5. But no, it is November 13th. We have all 7 council members present, lots of staff. Some mayors out there somewhere. And our first item on the agenda is a discussion about the Western Stampede, which will be led by Ashley.
Yes, it's still never too early to talk July, at least in our world. So this one, we just kind of after last year thought we'd sit down with you all early in the season so we can share what we've already been working on, planning for, to get thoughts, input on that. And then that way, I mean, really, we have a lot of our stuff locked in by February, March, just with contracts and everything like that. So making sure we're going on the right path that you all feel kind of represents our platinum year. It'll be the 70th anniversary of the Stampede for 2025. So we're really going to lean into that one. We met with communications this morning with Marie, and they were going to work on a platinum year logo. So they already have kind of movement and steps on that one. So they're moving forward with marketing on the RCA that was submitted. We have budget. These are just, our dates are selected is July 3rd, 4th, 5th. So it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday again this year, which works out very well for us with that platinum year again. And the budget expenses there for the past couple of years are showing kind of little line items explaining why the expenses increased throughout those few years. And then the 26 requests just adding the entertainment stage and breakaway roping. So breakaway roping is a new cowgirl sport. All the other rodeos have that one. We put in for it for this coming year for the 2025, just so we stay current with it and also open up more kind of female sports and athletes that can be on site. With increasing the purse money last year, we had, I believe it was like 88 barrel riders in Slack, which took about 6-7 hours, which was a crazy increase, but an awesome, again, just getting our name out there. People know about us. They're willing to stop if there's a chance for more purse, and having breakaway again, I'll just bring more athletes and more exposure for the young cowgirls in the crowd and keeping us up just with the current PRCA rodeos all over the country. The entertainment stage, those numbers can fluctuate based on kind of final location. Thoughts on that?
So
Discussions on that piece.
what are we talking about a stage for? We authorized a permanent stage.
Yes, and this is where I'm happy, I knew this would come up. With our veterans master plan, looking at that, we don't want that to interfere. We'd hate to install it and then have to tear it out as we work towards that master plan. So we're talking back, again, we've met with Mayor Corbin, possibility of going back to purchasing a permanent stage or renting until we can really nail down a location within Veterans Park. It wasn't built into the master plan, so we really just got a little worried to not put it in there or put it in somewhere that then ripped out in a few years and be wasted money. But
what about
unless we can
this stage? Like, is this stage that you're proposing here, is it meant for the rodeo grounds itself?
This would be in the park. So this would be, yeah, kind of in the past, we've had past stampedes, pie eating contests. A lot of other areas have smaller little local dance groups, things like that, choir groups, all of that really just kind of fill throughout the day. There is talks as well. I know the Viridian has that amphitheater space as well. With that one, a couple of issues come up with if during the rodeo, once those doors are open and music is playing, it'll drown out any noise that's in the Viridian. So that really limits any time usage in the evening for that stage amphitheater area. So that's an option till about 5:30. And then after that,
Art Center.
yeah, that could be one if you wanted to look into an indoors stage. That one hard to plan based on the concept, but we can, sort through some things and look at the blueprints and have an indoor concert. This was more of a kind of focus on the outdoor big stage, added bonus or asset to the park that we can just continue to add events over there, which are free for people to attend. So if you can't afford the rodeo, you're able to go and just enjoy a pie eating contest or something kind of.
Is there
like
equipment stage that we're planning on buying for the art center that could be used outside for this temporary aspect?
We have a plan for the issue that we're still trying to work on. I mean, if we had our preference, it would be to rent a stage. It's easier when we purchase a stage permanently. We have to have somewhere to store it, which we really don't have anywhere to store it, from the elements. You have to have people transport it, set it up, maintain it. Again, I would love a permanent one, but looking at the master plan, I just think we need to do it right.
I was just thinking it was saving money. If we're already gonna buy stuff
Yeah,
for the art
I
center.
like what you're saying, but there's nowhere to store a stage there either.
Why would it be hard to figure out, given the master plan, where to put it?
We could, yeah, which we can, we'd have to go back to redo the master plan unless you wanna pick somewhere that's
I mean,
open.
we're assuming, you're assuming. And I don't think there's anybody in this council, if we go back to that master plan, there's nobody in the council that was going to adopt that master plan, lock,
Yeah.
stock and barrel at $27 million.
Yep, I agree with you.
I think that's fair to say. Yep. And we heard discussions about what we were picking and choosing and what might work and what might not. And the next step is decide how much money do we want to spend in phases, those kind of things. But if we're doing that in the next 2 or 3 months, shouldn't be that hard to figure out where the stage would go, no matter how we do that.
Well, if you think about, they're thinking to themselves, well, what is the council going to approve out of this $27 million proposal? What pieces and parts are they going to approve, and would that affect where the stage eventually goes? That's what I'm seeing
Yeah.
to do.
Well, it's kind of similar, we got your priority list for the master plan and, the amphitheater wasn't in the top 10. So if we want to prioritize it above some of those, I'm happy to do that.
Well, I think it wasn't in the top 10 because we had already
Authorized.
authorized.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
that was our thought.
I'm sorry. Yeah, when I got here in October, I got here last October. That's when I was giving your top 10 list. We didn't talk the entertainment stage till
But
budget season.
From that October,
We've
But we can make it a-
we decided we wanted a stage. You guys proposed in the budget last July this same amount, and we said, no, we want a permanent stage. That seems to me that moves the priority up from October. It moves that priority up substantially.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong.
No, we can look at that.
I
Right,
think
so
we should.
I know there was other
I've seen where they're going from, so they're proposing, we didn't have a stage last year, so they're proposing we do one this year. The stage you guys are talking about, I get it, I'm all for it, I didn't approve it because it was last year when I was on here. We're gonna do that,
No, it was this budget, this last July.
Yeah.
but this is a one-time thing, so the budget you guys are talking about, you're talking about a permanent stage, right?
And we authorized it effective July.
But we can't put up a permanent stage if we're redoing the park.
Yes, we can.
We could.
No.
We could.
Are we gonna- Tell me this, are we going to rip down Wild West Jordan Playground?
No,
Because
that wasn't in what we just did.
Exactly. There are parts of the park that we're not going to destroy. So we can choose to put a permanent stage in it and leave it there. It doesn't have to change. And newsflash, by the time that park really gets going, probably I'll be dead anyways, possibly, because $30 million, where are we coming up with that? Not for a long time. So
I disagree.
I do not want to spend money every year to rent a stage when that money could be paying for a permanent stage, that we could just decide that's where it is. And the master plan works around it.
And we already authorized the.
And I thought we had already done
$300,000
that, yes.
on those.
Yeah, no, that's again, I'm glad why we're meeting here instead of waiting till much later in the budget
But the
process.
permanent stage won't be ready by this.
Yeah.
Right, it won't, but in the
build a
meantime,
permanent
we may
stage
have an
before
arts building
We
ready.
can see, I mean,
Could be.
Because we don't have the plan done.
you can see, some of them they do make, depending on what the type we want, they can make them pretty quick. We've had pavilions done in a couple months, so
Well,
I think it'll
and
just come
the
down
other-
to,
The other thing, Corey, is my impression was this permanent stage, or sorry, the temporary stage is an elevated sort of thing. And when we were talking more of an amphitheater that's like sunken down in, is the concept vastly different for the temporary stage than the permanent stage?
no, so the permanent stages that we were looking at that with our budget would be an elevated, it'd have to be some concrete up with kind of almost like a pavilion to say. with
Kind of like what
tower.
was it?
There's one in Harriman, Daybreak area. Yeah, so
Pamela, you
go
helped me out
down
with
into
the
an
stage the
amphitheater
last
would
time.
be
It was 3 years ago,
a
right?
much bigger
It was-
expense.
Yeah, before COVID and the several years before.
Right, it was basically a stage, they put it up and they
Yeah.
took it right back down.
Yeah, the issue was the sun.
Yeah.
Well, they had it facing west.
But
It was a rough.
I'm saying, I get where they're coming from this, we're not, yes, we're gonna get a permanent stage, but we're not gonna have one by this July.
Or we can, again, look at a portable stage permanent. That could be we can try to find somewhere to store it. We can use it at other parks.
What's the cost of
needed.
the rental?
I have two quotes that we just got. These are the ones they did the suicide walk in the park, that special event.
That's what I was gonna bring up, because that stage was a lot different than the one we had at Veteran at the Fourth of July 5 years ago.
Yeah, this one, it was like so the covered one, this is a 32 foot by 24 foot covered with stairs. With labor and all that for all 3 days is 15,880. So that's just stage and all those components, not sound,
Yeah, not
and then
sound, right.
entertainers and things like that on top of it.
Yeah.
But that's for
Right,
all.
similar
three.
that they have a Taylorsville stage, right?
Probably, yeah, kind of like your standard big covered. An uncovered one is
Yeah,
13.5.
that's not permanent and they put it up for 3 days and they take it down.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what the covered. Uncovered is about $2,000 less, but the sun can be harsh out there, so. But yeah, that's just one area that
So
gave us a
if-
quote.
So if we don't want a stage for this July, then we don't do this. We're not gonna have a permanent stage by July.
There could be a permanent stage by July, or we could rent a stage.
That's what.
The cost of a permanent stage is about 300,000, is that?
Which we already budgeted. Yeah, it said, no, we budgeted 200,000, yeah.
I think we budgeted 3.
We can, I think it was two, I think Corey's right, that sounds right. But
my
regardless,
other word.
we can.
But we could, yeah, permanent, or portable, we can purchase around the same, around 200,000. For a good one.
But the frustrating thing to me though, is that this is just another case of our left hand and our right hand are both getting direction and they're not talking to each other. Budget money for a permanent stage in this budget year, right? And now we're planning something and saying we're gonna use a temporary stage. And now we're working on a master plan that doesn't have either one. And we got 3 different processes going on and nobody knows who's doing what and where anything, how it all works together. It's frustrating.
Okay, I understand.
You are correct there. So, and my preference would be find a place for a permanent stage first and see if it can work with the master plan.
Well, we can make it
adopt
work.
a
Yeah,
master
I
plan.
agree. We could make it work. I'm not, yeah.
We didn't adopt a master plan. We just were presented with one. We haven't adopted it officially, right? Just a committee of the whole meeting, discussion. So that's fluid. That's not set in stone. If we decide to build a stage and rework the master plan, we can do that.
Well, and
That's
if
my
we set the
preference.
place for the, for the permanent spot, and for some reason we're not able to get it, we can rent it and put it in that spot and.
I understand, and I'm okay with that for a Band-Aid as long as we have a plan.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, do the plan first.
But if we don't have if we're still operating 3 different programs and nobody knows who's doing what, then I'm not okay renting a stage as a permanent Band-Aid. It's just gonna keep getting renewed, right?
Yeah.
But if my second preference would be buy a portable stage instead of renting one. Because then we can use it wherever, whenever, however we want to. Events, we can do events anywhere. Kind of cool to have that capability, as long as it's not ridiculously more expensive, right?
And the only issue, I would love a permanent stage as well. It's just the storage, unless we can get Brian to open up some bays at Public Works for us, but.
The cemetery building.
So we're storing it indoors, that's the only tricky part. Is it?
them your problem, my
Without the small
problem.
Yeah,
There's not any way to store it over in the arts facility.
it wouldn't be
I have
big
some
enough.
empty rooms in the bottom of this
Yeah.
building.
Yes, I don't think it would be big enough just with the.
It's normally,
They're big.
stages like that are normally the size of a semi-trailer.
Yeah, they're big and then a lot of it, they'll open up so that it's more square shaped. And so they are,
Plenty of
Let me-
parking lot out
Let me
here.
ask this question.
that's just in the winter, it's where it.
Would it make sense to rent a stage on a permanent basis for the simple fact that we can't project what our needs may be in 5 or 10 years? And are those needs going to change for the stage based on what events we're scheduling?
Air has something.
that, the reason this has come up is probably because of me having that discussion with them. Because I said I would prefer that because then what your needs are, is they change, they meet it. If we want a different spot, we could do that. And so I told them to come back and talk to you about this. So don't blame them, blame me. And I also said that if we do this, when technology changes, then our stage technology can change according to what the future things are doing. Something as simple as from LED lights to.
The problem with that, Mayor, is that we rent the one stage for 3 days.
Not a problem.
If you own a stage or you have a permanent stage, then you have the chance to use it for multiple events. Movies in the park, concerts in the park, those kind of things. If what we're saying is all we want is a stage for 3 days in Western Stampede, and we don't want a community venue to have community events in the park like
No,
Midvale does,
That's
or like.
not what I was saying. What I'm saying is this gives you flexibility. You can do it in different parts of the park, different sizes, if you know what the needs are, multiple
Right, but if you
times.
have to rent that, then you're renting it every time you're doing it,
How
and
many times would
eventually.
you rent it until it catches up to the cost of buying, putting one in permanently?
That's the question.
But if you do say that we're gonna rent it, then what will happen, guaranteed, because this is comments that we've heard from your staff, is unless the event is cost effective and will pay for itself, we won't do it. So then you start saying,
I don't
well,
think we've said that.
yes, you have. So we can, if you want to have an offline discussion about that, I'll be glad to have it.
I can't do that on.
But the fact of the matter, that's the point of, at least what I gather, the point of having a permanent amphitheater, stage, whatever, was so that we could have multiple events there time and time again, and not just rent that for a temporary thing and then say, well, okay, and then we move on to the next one, and then we have to rent it again, and we have to rent it again, and if that's what we want to do, great, but I probably won't support that then.
Well, that's not what you want to do.
But I'm with Councilmember Jacob. What we've got is a lack of coordination on where we're going with this, and I agree with him 100%.
So why don't
I
we look
apologize, I'll try to
into
coordinate
the
better.
timeline of building a permanent stage and see where that's at
Yeah,
and then where it takes us. And if it's not feasible, then it looks like we are kind of hands are tied and we'll rent one for this year.
And I would say before that, we fix the master plan of the park and see where that
Where we wanna put it.
amphitheater is gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's.
Could you speak to the changing needs of a stage? Is that a real thing or are we?
Not a whole lot. No, but what when you talk about your needs, right now we have very little because we don't do anything. But once you put a stage, then you find the needs that are there. But it's going to not be, we're not gonna have Cirque du Soleil suddenly come in and say, we need, to be able to do 20-foot aerial drops and stuff like that. It's gonna be a stage that people are gonna know what it's gonna be. So you're not going to end up with a lot of changes. We're gonna build a stage that's going to be for what we expect to have in the park, which might be concerts, some dance recitals, some other musical things, maybe some plays of some sort during the summer, and all of those things are gonna be a basic stage.
The
So
only thing that's really changed technology wise is lighting. And even then, a lot of places still have old lights versus the new stuff. And that doesn't really make a difference until people have their budgets and they decide to get new lights.
Different types of stages and sizes of stages,
That
that's not
doesn't really
really gonna
If you're
affect us.
Then you will create the demand.
exactly, that's
Build a
100%.
venue, people will say, oh, I can hold this at that venue, or I can do this at that venue, not, I wanna hold this, build me a venue, that's what the Art Society does, but.
I was just gonna say, what's in the approved budget is a $200,000 allocation for the building of a permanent stage in Veterans Park.
Yeah, that's it. We'd ask for 3, and I'm worried, yeah, 200 will be close. I don't know that we can do it
Well,
permanent,
we could. we
I
could
thought it was
amend
3
the
years.
Budget if we had to.
but yeah.
And that's where I think we need to kind of not get upset about this whole thing. Our park department, all they said is we want to have an entertainment stage. They knew we don't have a permanent one yet. They're saying, hey, what we could do is we could do this one for the rodeo because our permanent one's not done yet. So I don't think we need to get upset with the parks people
And
for
you're
even
right.
No,
presenting
that's
this.
just trying to figure things out.
Yeah, that's all.
I see a lot of people getting upset that
No,
they even
Not
presented
wrong.
this.
You're not wrong, Chad, but the trouble with just saying, this is how we can go ahead for right now, is that that's what we always do. And then we get into situations where we've got 5 things. to look
But
at.
they know that the permanent one's coming. They just knew it wouldn't be ready for this July, so.
You'd think.
Yeah, we could possibly, like say, we've done.
Well,
pavilions
has
over the
anyone
winter,
said it's gonna be
so
done by July? I haven't heard that.
We've done them over the winter with pavilions before, so we.
Yeah, but
we'll-
before
Or
this meeting,
saying maybe he can.
Yeah, I'm not.
but I'm
wrong.
saying before this meeting, no one in this room knew that a stage would be permanent by July. So they presented this as an option.
I will
Actually, we
tell you,
thought
I
it
thought
would.
there would be one.
We thought it would when we
They
allocated
did
the
the two
funds
hundred K
in June.
When did they tell us it'd be done by July?
Well, that's the thing, though.
It hasn't. It hasn't even been presented.
But it was-
But
It
it
was
was
authorized for this
allocated
budget.
in that
It was
budget.
authorized, but it's never been presented.
But it also, Chad, hasn't been
No, I
said, it
agree.
can't be done.
Right.
All we said was, we want to spend money on it and we're
Right.
waiting.
So let's not get upset at them
Yeah.
for not presenting it.
Yeah, no, I'm not upset at
Oh,
all.
yeah, and that's all right. Again,
Actually, it's all your fault.
Recognize, I will be the main performer. But yeah, so I guess moving forward, we have confirmed that we would like the entertainment stage in some way, shape or form, not the
Yes.
Stampede, to add that
Correct.
added asset to the park and to the offerings of the Stampede.
not to stick with the stage, but I do. So during the Stampede, what kind of programming? Are you looking for just music or pie eating contests or local
Well,
things? Cause
this
I
is
know
what
that
we
was,
use for
yeah, I knew you
seasonal
thought this, that's why I wanted to
Yes,
ask.
so what we've done throughout the day, like she mentioned, we would do local singing groups, dance groups, those troops, they love seeing their kids up on stage performing, that sort of thing. And we had magicians, we had hypnotists, and in the evening each night, we had a headliner. And that's where the prices can really vary.
But I can tell you that I am in charge of all the concerts in Midvale, and they had a high budget, and I said, forget that. I'll get headliners here in Utah, and I'll pay them $700 to come to a show. And I can get, because the local people bring in their own people to see them. I don't have to, because they were bringing like, they're the top act in Colorado Springs. I was like, no one cares.
We did 500 for the Mexican band, and they brought more people than any other act ever.
That's George
Yeah.
Romero?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm saying
And I
that's,
think, yeah, he's always ready. to
yeah,
get
so
on
I would,
stage.
I would put him on, but yeah, no, you don't need to, your
Timing of,
headliners don't need to cost a lot.
kind of a timing of a headlining band. There's obviously that, do we want it to be at 7 o'clock as the rodeo's going on? So there's kind of 2 separate large events. Do we want it like at 5 o'clock? So you go to the park, see the headlining
That's what I
band, go to
would
the
do.
rodeo, kind of like a even flow of events. To kind of,
But that's stuff we can all work out.
Yeah, we
yeah,
can
so
work
that's
that
kind of like the things
That's
we're
trending.
looking forward to. but-
I think what the desire that I have and that I've heard from the body before is we just want to ensure that for our community, there's something that everyone can do because not everyone can afford to go to the rodeo. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, not everybody wants to go to the rodeo, but they
We
want
have
to,
that, yeah.
they want to have fun and they want to celebrate, which is why we did the pie eating and the watermelon and those
Fun
kinds of
stuff.
things, because
You know,
they
it's-
bring
it-
community. We want to bring community.
The chance for the community to get together, and celebrate, and if all we're doing, I mean, my philosophy is if all we're doing is the carnival, which costs money, and the rodeo, which costs money, we're excluding a lot of people, and what we want to do is be inclusive of the community and get people to come. And particularly, and what I'm gonna tell you is the 2025 is the precursor to the big 4th of July celebration. Because the year after that is and if anybody knows the word to say, the bicentennial, quadrennial, 200, whatever, there's a special word for 250th.
That might quincentennial.
Something like that. Yeah, it's I think you're right. I think it is the anyway,
Couple words here.
the 2026 is gonna be,
You're assuming we're still gonna be America.
okay, yes, we are. But 2026 will be should be a huge celebration. And so 2025 is gonna be the precursor lead in. And so we've got to
we've got to do these things to get the community here and the community to celebrate.
Yeah, well, we're excited to get that going and,
One thing we thought too is if you don't use the Arts Center for any kind of entertainment, that could be a great place for a VIP.
yeah, I think the next slide, Warren, has the kind of the additions that we're thinking of. Some of these are going for it, others are kind of up in the air, you know, just wild pipe dreams type thing. And yeah, one was to use it as a VIP area or like a history museum. We're working with our Stampede committee members who have been on the committee for years and years, and trying to find, we actually just found a tape from 2006, like an old mini VHS that we're gonna try to pull some images from and just kind of have like a history of the Stampede and just photos and images and bios of old royalty, try to have those like printed off on banners and things. So really, yeah, highlighting that, and having that, yeah, be the sponsor VIP area. Some committee members.
Couldn't you do both? Couldn't you have the
Yeah.
VIP eating in the
Oh, yeah, certainly.
auditorium?
When I,
and
when I,
then
when I read
other
that,
eating?
I read the history, the museum as the VIP area, and I was gonna go, that's not a good idea. It's just me reading quickly a couple days ago.
Yeah, and I know, at some rodeos, they do kind of like a behind the year or behind the scenes, like you kind of walk back, look at the stock, meet with the contractor, and people will pay some extra money for
But
that.
especially all
So
that
like when
stuff.
you go on a cruise, you can pay for the
That could be
behind the
a
scenes of
Yeah,
cruise
kind
and
of a,
operations.
like call it a, you know, a platinum pass, and that could be an add-on type thing. So we're trying to really, again, lean into the platinum. The skydivers, some of the rodeos, I think Harriman has it, we just thought that'd be super cool. I don't know if it's feasible with how we lie next to a tracks line and if you land a little early or not.
You gonna bring
um,
planes in for that?
Sherry reached out to a group that does it for Harriman. They just fly. I think one rodeo last year, the wind blew the skydivers actually into the park. So all the people in the park just held the flag and they did the anthem and yeah, kind of jointly. It was, I guess, ended up being cool, but I'm like, I would, yeah.
Yeah.
So that one's, yeah, would just kind of be again, kind of a wild thing to really kick off the 70th year entertainment stage, for our nightly things. We found the drone show was a huge hit, the 2 nights of it. I don't know if it was enough of a draw. So we're looking into, if it sounds good and just kind of, yeah, good for it. A dirt dance following the rodeo. A lot of places will do that, kind of have like a line dance or a square dance post rodeo. Swing dance, there's a couple of groups actually locally that do it. Logistically, obviously working out how you get crowds to come and enter in and exit in, but just some pieces to work on.
Where do
Again,
you hold this dirt dance?
actually on the rodeo dirt, yeah.
Lehigh.
Same place
Yeah.
that Cat
Lehigh
Horse
does that
is
for their
just
rodeo.
Mhm.
Yep, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I guess
We could do
more
more
into that
before
yeah.
the entertainment stage.
Yeah.
And then you go do it
Yeah.
more later
It's
that
a-
night.
We'll still do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't wear my nice boots,
I
but yeah,
love it,
some
Sarah.
people are into that. Then obviously our 4th of July fireworks and then the drones on the 5th, to celebrate. So that way each night post rodeo,
I like
we have
something
something
different.
going on. And again, that way hopefully it can help with some traffic as people leave early and just to kind of extend the party really
Mhm.
for more or less, yeah, so kind of, we'll just be going all day long. So those are what we're working on, looking at, 70th anniversary apparel that we could sell. I think that's about it. Yeah, really just kind of getting a lot of decorations out there, getting that updated logo and having those kind of after party, we'll call them events each night as well. So I think that's that. And then we just kind of looked at,
You have the stage, you have, you can have some.
yeah, we could do
After
things,
party
yeah, in
things,
there.
yeah.
And we've
I
looked
mean, you
at.
could do a couple of small late night band dances.
Yeah,
Stage
and
too.
with the noise ordinances at 10 PM for the city, being aware of that, like silent discos, we've kind of looked into and explored as well, where people have headphones on, so you listen to your music on that, and it's actually just quiet, but people can dance. So that way it's kind of a silent way that people can still enjoy the evening. So,
I've done.
They're a blast, yeah.
And I've done it before at events. It's really fun.
Yeah, or even like, the Viridian
We have game nights
amphitheater
with it
area.
too, like-
Yeah, so kind of, there are quieter options as well to be cognizant of our neighbors, and everything like that. So a lot of great options that we're bouncing around. These are kind of our top 10 that we're really looking into and exploring. Skydivers is like a pipe dream. I think that's Sherry's dream to get going because she saw it at
Some
here
of those
in Raleigh.
skydivers, it doesn't take much to drop in.
I mean,
Skydiving instructors.
we could have council members skydive in with flags if desired, yeah.
I'd do
I'll
that.
send the sign up sheet out at the end of this meeting. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking forward to and planning on to really elevate this and kind of get it going. So then our last slide was just things we're looking at as potential projects, again, long-term planning, thinking ahead of what does the rodeo arena look like? How can we utilize it more? Just a couple of thoughts that we had was concreting under the dirt. Some places have that. Pull the dirt off. Now you have a concrete slab where you can do vendor markets, food trucks,
Yep.
touch a trucks, kind of kids events with inflatables, ice skating rink,
like the
as
ice skating
the
rink in the
hockey
winter
leagues
season.
coming in.
I would like that, and when I attended the thank you dinner to the rodeo people, one of their concerns that they brought to me was sometimes, after the demolition derby, we end up with parts that are then in our dirt. And that's a concern for the cowboys, because their horses aren't cheap. And if their horse is gone, they're gone.
Yeah, their livelihood and.
Yeah, and so I really think
Yeah, then
that
our
the
reputation
concrete
is-
would be a really good idea. The other question I have is, we increased the purse last year, but is it where it needs to be? Because that was another thing they mentioned is, if we don't keep our purse up.
Mhm. I think, yeah, it's the balance of we oftentimes look at Oakley and what their purse is. I will say that one is quite a high amount. So to get there, it would be almost a double. So I think over time we could keep up with the trends. I think we are higher than some other local ones now with that. I mean, we did see with that, even that slight increase for barrel racing, we had, quadruple the number of racers. And we did get we actually had some bull riders ride all 8 seconds, unlike the year prior when we didn't have any because they all just went straight to Oakley where they could make 20K for 8 seconds of riding. Again, wouldn't do that myself, but yeah, so I would say it helped definitely this year, kind of focusing on just getting that breakaway added with that purse money. That'll bring in a whole other round of riders and then evaluate it again. But I think the purse money will be a constant kind of just evaluation of.
But you think we're
stands.
okay for this summer?
I think for this summer, we're okay. Yeah, we look to do kind of the platinum year and expand as a whole, the event. But we will certainly keep watching it. And I know our committee always will push to be like Oakley and we will too, but it'll take some creativity.
How is the events committee I know after COVID, it was non-existent. Is that coming back? Are we getting more people interested in the community to come and help volunteer and be a part of it?
I'm not
Or
sure
do you
how
help with
we have the Stampede committee and then another one, don't have like an event specific one, but we do have, I'd say really good dedicated bunch in the Stampede.
We used to have that
committee.
events committee. That's
Mhm.
what brought me into the city.
Mhm.
So I didn't know if that's something we need to rebuild. So we have that support and that help from the community and the inputs.
I think we could look into that. Yeah, mean,
I personally would like, I
Yeah.
said, I've been to, like I said, 3 cities now and we've all had city events.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say this was the most organized. Ashley, Sherry were amazing. I've never seen them more organized. But I was surprised at the lack of community volunteers.
Yeah.
At
I would
other
like
cities, a
to-
lot
I know
more.
it's
I
not
would
under
love to
our
have.
purview and it's the mayor's,
community
but I would like to see that events committee come back and have more of that community input to be a part of this.
which, yeah, as we keep growing and expanding
Exactly.
would be a huge help. So.
Cause you never know,
Yeah.
that future city council member will be on there.
But I like first time I've ever seen breakaway roping was, this past summer at the Dillard County Fair that my daughter runs. And that was an interesting event to watch the women. Is it women cowboys? There's, yeah,
Cowgirls, I think.
How people.
yeah, the women riders to do that event. And that was it's actually a pretty cool event. So
Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, so we're excited about that. Obviously, that's a different type of stock animal that we need to, so we'll have some rearranging in the back area, but yeah, we're excited to have that. And yeah, these are just kind of long-term things we've been mulling over and looking at what can we do, and if we concrete floor it, we have
Can
a list
you
of things we
bring
can
to
do.
us what a concrete floor before the budget next
Cost
budget?
on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of dependent on if we did internal, external, but we can start exploring costs on
On
that.
on the cost of the concrete floor, I'd be very interested to know the cost of it versus the cost of a concrete floor with refrigerant tubing in it or whatever that's needed for the ice rink.
Yep, I agree.
We put an ice rink, then we convinced the Utah Hockey Club to do an outdoor
This is my new favorite
Yeah.
sport.
Or is it
My
hockey?
new favorite
Hockey
sport,
dad.
so I'm all for it.
No, then we get.
Yeah, so that's kind of all that we had to present. Again, if there's any other questions or comments as we go into 2025, feel free to ask now, or I know I kind of threw a lot at you all,
So-
but
Have you talked about, is there any, we've talked about redoing the press box or the VIP box. We talked about, we see the floor and if it's concrete. And I've also heard talk of redoing the actual bleachers, the stanzas. Are you working on those plans for us?
yeah,
Well, I say we're working on, this is where it gets tricky. I've been looking at lots of different cost estimates. Kind of the hard part, and I think we'll need to at one point decide what we want the arena to, like, if we want to replace just bleachers, we can do that pretty simple, but again, it goes back to, there's been talks of ripping this out, moving it here. But if we know, hey, this is staying, let's just slowly add to it. I've been working on cost estimates for those. I'm looking at, a lot of places now are adding a party deck, they call it, where it's kind of the premier VIP, the higher paid. That's one of the big trends right now, so we're looking at costs for that if we can, so.
yeah, kind of piecing together what that long-term plan looks like. The concrete was one, and we know we're gonna keep the arena, the core unit of it, so what can we do in the,
We're gonna keep,
kind of that.
we're gonna keep the arena in its location. And I agree, the first thing we need to do is do the concrete. And then we can expand out, we can look at better sky boxes and better bleachers. And the concrete, the food trucks at the north end and the stuff that we talked about with the master plan.
I did get, that's the customers that came out to add, where we've talked about some asphalt and concrete around the truck area for the bleachers. That alone was 250,000.
Yeah.
For just adding that outside of the area, which is crazy. But that's one idea that did get back.
What about the parking lot to the west? Have we looked into paving that?
Oh, no.
We're paving part of it.
Yeah.
Yes, we're paving part of it.
It is, yes.
I
By
believe
the
it
arts.
was a later phase of the
Yeah.
arts building, and that's all.
Again, it'd be
I think it
part
was
of
the
the
later
master,
phase of the arts building, I believe.
and it's all paved in that master plan. Most of it is paved.
We'll get there.
Yeah, otherwise, put down July 3rd, 4th, and 5th on your calendars for bingo callers and all your entertainment stage and all of
Call
that.
them, I'll call.
Skydivers, yeah, however you all wanna.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
We gotta do
Pie
that.
makers, yeah.
Any contacts, yeah.
Yeah,
Love any
contacts,
contacts you have.
pie makers that can make in bulk, things like that. So, but if anything comes up as you're reviewing these, just as always, let us know. Again, yeah, even though it is November, we're already planning and getting stuff set and sorted. So that way we can be good to go, and yeah, appreciate communications working with us early and kind of all the other divisions that will already start meeting with us from January. So
So slack on Saturday this year again?
it should be, yeah. We'll
Okay.
confirm with Lynn, but yeah, I think we'll do kind of that morning after the 4th slack, and then
What's
The slack is where the rodeo contestants that can't make the primetime night, they still get to compete. And what we typically do is have a breakfast for the slack contestants
And
and
their family.
their families.
yeah, it's kind of a nice, just relaxed rodeo almost.
We
You get to
really
watch
appreciate
the-
it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so and you're welcome to come. Yeah, it is open to the public. It's
I
I
enjoy serving breakfast with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I won't take up any more time. Appreciate it all, and we look forward to July.
Okay, thank you.
So before you walk
Oh,
away,
yeah.
for me, you have clear direction on the stage. I'm not sure if
There is
no- if we tried it.
I'm just gonna get cost for all the timeline. We'll be right, yeah.
You need somewhere to store it, we will store it.
Okay.
I have a little bit of concern about the stage. Sorry, Corey will do everything he can, but there's $17+ million in parks capital projects in the budget. You put it in the budget, you put it in a capital project fund. I know there's some frustration that it's not already under construction. Corey's plate is really full already, and his priority right now has been Ronwood Park soccer fields and getting those going. And working with the county on the rec center for the ZAP application. So we'll do our best, but I just want to manage expectations there. The entertainment stage, there's a lot of question marks on location and use, so we'll work on it. We hear a lot of support and push for that entertainment stage.
Can you come up with a
but-
plan A, B, and C then?
Yes, but I don't want to commit on a timeframe. Certainly Corey's gonna try hard, Ashley's gonna try hard, but I don't want to commit that an entertainment stage will be done by July.
So,
Hence
and
plan A, B, and C.
as a broader discussion on that, just really not a discussion, but just a point. Are we putting the cart ahead of the horse then when we decide to throw something in the budget and say, hey, we want a stage, here's some money? Is our cart ahead of the horse because it's not just money? Right? It's time, it's personnel, it's what is
I
it?
mean, when you appropriate funds, you signal this is a priority, this is a direction, this is a goal. That's great. In a capital project fund, that's great. Capital project funds roll over, so if we don't get to it this year, it'll roll over, we'll get to it next year. It's fine budgeting for it, but because it's in the budget this year, doesn't mean we can get to it this year on capital project funds.
Like our arts facility. We had money 6 years ago.
On that.
But I think the real thing we did is let's figure out where this is gonna go. And that's the main thing. If it doesn't get built, we at least know where it's gonna go and we can put the stage there. And in the very worst case scenario, we can go, wow, we're glad we put in a fake one because this was not the place this needed to be. But let's at least start thinking where it's gonna go and where that's gonna fit in the master plan.
Yep.
Things. That I think is the main thing. And that has, that's should be the main thing we're looking at here anyway.
We can find a couple options to present and show you, yeah, new location.
And then we'll be happy to just listen to the different things. For me, the show goes on regardless. Right?
Thank you.
Thanks.
We often hear as the council, right, that, well, we'd love to do that, but we don't have the budget for it. So we provide the budget and then it still doesn't happen. We'd love to do that, but we don't have the budget for it. And we say, okay, well, here's some budget. Oh, well, we can't do it because of X, Y, and Z and we got other
Don't have time
priorities or
for it.
whatever. Yeah, whatever happens. And so if the discussion is not, there's no budget for it, then let's not make that the discussion. Let's first say, what is our bandwidth? If that's the first question that we need to ask. What's the bandwidth? When can we realistically expect something like this to get done if we want a stage? Is it a 2-year project, a 5-year project? Is it a 10-year project? Is it like an arts program? What are we talking about? That's, I guess, my frustration is that I heard for 9 years on the city council that we do anything you want if you just put the budget together for it. Okay,
And I would vote that when we're saying here's the money, that we'd be told, right?
right.
During the budget discussion, I wish we would have been told, that's great, but we're not
Takes
going
3
to have.
years to get turnouts for firemen or whatever.
Yeah,
tell them,
Yeah, yes,
right?
and that's the other frustration I think that I'm feeling. It's like, but we gave you the money. We didn't get told when we were giving you the money that it couldn't be done.
Yeah, we might have found another place to put $200,000 this year.
Now, that money's not lost, right? I mean, it's
But we can
there,
provide it
it's in the
next
budget,
year.
it's in the capital project fund. We're gonna keep carrying it forward to do it, yeah, but
But the cost of things gets more and more expensive
It
as time
does,
goes on.
right?
So that
And
stage is
they're-
getting smaller and
they're
smaller.
going as fast as they can. I mean, Corey is working so
So
hard.
that's the question though. Then that's the question is that we need to hear back. We don't have the bandwidth to do a stage this year. Why don't we allocate $200,000 next year instead of this year?
Actually, Zach, from my perspective, I think that when we put that kind of money in a budget, and say we want that kind of thing, if it can't be done, then what I would expect is somebody to come back and say, you wanted a stage and you authorized $200,000, but we don't have the bandwidth, but to get it done, this is what we need to expand the bandwidth. We need to hire a contractor and, we need to add another $40,000 to hire a contractor to help put it together or something like that. Instead of just pushing it off on the burner and saying, well, it's sitting there and we might get to it. then, you know, if it's a priority and then it seems to me the expectation would be, yes, we can get this done, but this is the additional resources that we would need to get it done. And are you willing to throw those resources at it to get it done? I think that's, you know, instead of saying, well, we don't have to get it done, tell us what we do need to get it done. Does that make sense?
Sure, and we can work on doing a better job at that, for sure. Capital projects often take more than one fiscal year to accomplish. So
Sure,
I just
sure.
want you to understand, and I don't want you to hold back on funding for a capital project until the year you think it can be done. Most capital projects are a multi-fiscal year process from design, development, construction. And so putting the money in the budget signals the direction, the intent, and that starts the process of working it into our development schedules, our construction schedules and everything else. So I don't want you to say, well, we'll wait, and only fund it in the moment if we think the project can get done, then other things will, you know, rise in priority.
We had an employee, and when they started, within a month, they said communication is a big problem in your city. I think that's the problem, Corbin. Communication is the problem. We don't hear that the stage probably can't come to fruition this year until parks come, and Ashley has to say, I need 40,000 more because I need 15, 20 for a stage. And we're thinking about, we gave you 200,000 for a stage. I think it's a communication issue. I think that we still have room to improve there.
For sure. And that's why we're having this conversation in November instead of in March or April like we did last year.
Yeah,
But
which
this
is good.
conversation, I think what's bubbling to the surface in this conversation is that it's not just about state. This is budget priorities writ large. This is more of a structural communication issue as much as anything else, but it's an expectation issue and what, you know, now I have questions about all this other stuff that we talked about during the budget. I mean, the arts program I brought up a couple times because that was a year and a half ago, right?
50,000 a year.
Gone nowhere. Yet. Gone nowhere yet. I imagine somebody's working on something somewhere. Oh. Stage, last year, I think, or was it this year that we doubled the budget for tree replacement? Did twice as many trees get replaced? Or did that go into well, now we've got it funded for 2 years instead of 1 year? What happened? You know, I've got all these questions in my mind now about all these things, fireman turnouts. Have we bought an extra set for everybody? Are we waiting? Does it take a long time? Is somebody too busy to order them? I don't know about any of that now. We assume that we put the budget out there. Is that where we're supposed to stop and not care if it ever gets done? Because that cost the previous city manager his job in this city. And I'm not trying to say we don't love you, because we do. We love you. Don't go anywhere. But what I'm saying is when we told, or we allocated resources, and that was under the old public government too. We allocated resources for X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't get done, but it doesn't get told to us that it's not getting done. Now we've got all these questions. You know what I mean? I'm just,
Well, you're absolutely right.
I'm frustrated.
You're absolutely right. It's not this budget year, it was the last budget year. We increased the streetlight fund by $1 to put in to add additional streetlights to the city. And we got no additional streetlights to the city. And it wasn't communicated until at the end of the year in the budget what happened with that $350,000. And so I agree with him. There's a frustration there that that there's a lack of communication, that if we're trying to improve aesthetics, improve certain things, we allocate the money and then it doesn't occur. It is frustrating.
All right, now that horse is thoroughly beat. I don't think we're getting anywhere else with it tonight, but something to think about maybe as we get toward our retreat in January. Conversation we can have. Next item on the agenda. Law 665, ladies and gentlemen. Discussion of replacing the Board of Adjustment with an administrative law judge. We're gonna let Patrick.
Scott, that sounds like something that you want to do.
And I just want you, sorry, I just want y'all to know, I'm committed to making sure that the Western Stampede is an absolute success this coming year. I volunteered, I told Corey, I'll serve as rodeo clown.
Build us a
free of
stage.
charge. Free of charge. And in fact, Josh is in with it. I mean, attorneys out there running from the bulls, the stands would be packed
Yeah.
to great acclaim.
Only if we told them that they're the city attorney.
Listen, I haven't run it past Dell to see if Risk would sign off on it, but I just want you to know, we're committed.
Can you answer a question?
Yes. Can I lead? Let me tell you what this is. Not asking for any money, not asking for any decisions, really even tonight. I think it's actually cheaper, but
Easier.
it's easier. We've got a Board of Adjustment.
How often do they meet? That's all I want to know.
Quarterly at a minimum. They have to meet 4 times a year.
I was honored if you want to ask me.
Oh,
And
then we have
Councilmember
a
Lamb
question,
can-
so-
I was on it for 2 years.
You were on the.
Sorry, keep going.
Design.
I was on the Board of
And
Adjustment,
this
so I was
is the one we talked
for
about.
2 years.
Okay,
Yeah. So they meet whenever there's business.
I'm fine if you go with your ALJ.
I guess what I'm here for is to get direction from the council as to what you would like.
My quick input, I was on it for 2 years. Yes, we met quarterly. We met more if there was something. The first year, I think we had 1, and then last year, maybe 3. But in my short time of doing it, every time we met, I kind of felt like, I don't know why we're here because we can't really make a decision because we have to follow the rules, kind of like planning commission. But there was one time where we had someone come up to us and they went through everything and all of us were like, oh yeah, we'll give you the waiver. And then we were told, no, you can't. We're like, so why are we here? So So I'm all for not having a Board of Adjustment because I feel like it was great service. I think it's a great experience for those that were on it. But in the end, we never really got to choose. We just had to follow whatever the rules were. So, does that make sense?
It does, because the regulations are set out by the state. They're super strict.
Right.
And so a
can't
Board of
remember
Adjustment has to follow what the state statute says. It's very rigid. They just march through the factors and they apply them. And it's an up or a down. There's not a lot of gray.
Right.
And I think what ends up happening is our Board of Adjustment members come in and say, well, but what about this? But what about this? But what about this? And it's like, no, back to the rules, back to the law, back to the law, back to the law. And I think it can be frustrating for laypersons to come in, sit on a body like that and have that exact same thing. In fact, I've been at the Board of Adjustment meetings since I came onto the city. Almost every meeting, there's multiple people that say the exact same thing that Councilmember Lamb just said. Why are we even here? What are we doing? And then we have to re-educate almost every meeting. It's tough. It's tough because they don't meet often
Exactly.
with a lot of work. So
Because usually you have to be the buzzkill.
I'm always.
So you want to be the rodeo clown to have some fun. I see it now.
Level it out. Level it out a little
The
bit.
best thing about the ALJ process is that if there's an appeal of the Board of Adjustment, the ALJ is going to build the record
Right.
correctly. And if there's an appeal to district court, then the district court looks at the but the ALJ knows what kind of record he's got to build. And I mean, the other thing is that I think it simplifies Scott's office's job because it's not a public meeting. It's a public hearing, but it's not a public meeting. And so all you've got to do is post a public hearing notice now, and you don't have to do the minutes of because it's an open meeting, but it's not an open meeting type thing, right? He makes the decision. There's a recorded record of the meeting that can be transcribed for the judge if it goes to an appeal. All of those kind of things, I think, for the cost, and the cost is you're only paying for the ALJ when he shows up. You're not paying the cost of the Board of Adjustment for the 5 or 7 or how many on the board 4 times a year and all the staff costs to get ready and those kind of things. I filled out the application, Scott's office takes the application for the variance and it goes to the ALJ and the ALJ should be up on Ludma and everything else and do it right? Wouldn't that be the simple, to me, that's the simple process.
I have, I wrote some notes down, which some of it has changed, especially since hearing from, Chad. So I wanted to know how the cities that have changed to ALJ, how that has impacted their decision-making efficiency and how satisfied are they with that change? That was one of the questions I had in my head. I also, you brought up the potential cost savings. Obviously, the ALJ will, that's a pay. Is it about the same or is it cheaper or is it more expensive? That was one of the questions. Not that it would be a deal breaker, but it was just, I just wanted to know more detailed costs between the board versus the ALJ. And then I also wanted, which actually Chad kind of answered this one. I wanted to get feedback from those who have been on the Board of Adjustments, how they feel about the change. But that was really good input from Chad. Some of the things I thought of, like, what if we did even a hybrid model? So we kind of got the best of both worlds as an option. And then here's one of the things I said, with an ALJ, decisions might face fewer legal challenges. This could be a positive point with the legal consistency and risk mitigation, if that's a priority for us as a council. So those are some of my thoughts that I had. Sorry, I know I threw out a lot at you.
No, it's great. Satisfaction, I don't know of any cities
Okay,
that have gone from a board to an ALJ and said, we don't like that, let's go back
that's
to a board.
good to know.
I think the satisfaction is that we like what's going on because we're not seeing people go back to the prior model.
Okay.
We're one of, I think, a few in the state, and especially for our size, that uses a board of community members to make these decisions for the reasons that you've kind of all outlined.
Yeah.
It's more efficient. You get generally a more defensible legal opinion. Oftentimes it's cheaper, right?
Okay.
We pay at a minimum, $250 per meeting, 4 times a year, right? So you're looking at $1,000 in cost. I don't know that an ALJ would
like
charge us
Yeah.
that much, and it's not a huge expense, but I think an ALJ would probably be half of the expensive. And the reason why this is coming up as well is we've been talking about the ways that the ALJ are going to be used for some of our administrative citation hearings, parking, code, all these other things. It kind of fits with that whole, increasing our use of an ALJ and what role they can, fill with the city. So those were the two that I noted. What else did?
I wanted to hear some more feedback from previous board members to see how they feel about it. And in my brainstorming head, I was like, would a hybrid model be an option?
Yeah, I don't know what a hybrid model would do or what that would look like.
Can you even do that?
Yeah, that's the point. It'd be like the ALJ working with a smaller board, but I mean, it was just a brainstorming idea. It was just, just an option of a balanced perspective, maybe.
Because it's defined in LUDMA as either ALJ or board.
And not a hybrid.
I don't know what a hybrid.
It was just, it's just a thought.
And then what you run into in that is kind of what Councilmember Lamb said, which is
Why are we here?
there's somebody that's going to be the killjoy and say, you can't do that. Don't worry about that. Let's come back here and then.
The other thing that we'll probably avoid is Liberty Home. With the variance that was actually the previous developer somehow got a variance that really didn't meet the state statute. And I think if we'd had an ALJ that had pulled the statute, I said, I can't do this because you're arguing for economic purposes, and it would have saved us
heartache for years on having, the variance there. So I think in the long run, because of the professional versus lay, if it were the lay person, here's my opinion. If the lay person were only there to deal with I want to put a shed on my back fence and the setback is 5, and I really only want to go 3 because of the way it works. Layperson may work. But when we're talking about things that we get into today on those variances, I think they're more complicated. I mean, I think the original reason for a board of adjustment was for setbacks. And so the idea of having neighbors say, well, does that really matter whether your shed's on the property line or 5 feet off or 10 feet off? That's different than the complicated land use decisions that we're making these days that are just crazy some days.
Well, it's a good point because, and like Councilmember Lamb said, there's so few variances that come through. The reason why I think there's so few variances that come through is it's been brought up in our discussions. Planning does a great job of weeding out the easy ones. And it's really the complex ones that end up coming to the Board of Adjustment. And who do we want making those complex decisions, I think is an ALJ. But planning does a great job with sheds, does a great job with these, 4 foot versus 3 foot versus 5 foot setbacks. They're working those out and they're remedying those situations before it even gets to the Board of Adjustment. It's really these bigger, more complex. And I think the question is, going forward, are you gonna see more sheds with 5 foot setback or more complex development type issues being requested for variances and appeals? I think it's the latter, but I don't know, Scott.
Yeah, I agree. So one of the questions that you had was how do the current board members feel? Mayor's reached out proactively, knowing that this was a discussion item tonight. Obviously, we don't know which way the council is going to go on this yet, but just to not surprise them, right, Mayor? He's reached out and asked how they feel. And Councilmember Lamb basically articulated very well how they feel. They love the city. They love to be part of community building, but the value that they're seeing on the board is just not there. Is that fair?
Yeah, and some of them still want to be involved, so we'll involve them in other committees in other ways.
Yeah.
They like being involved.
I mean, I don't know all of them because it's changed out, but the 2 or 3 that are on there that I do know, if it went away at the end of this year, they wouldn't be surprised.
So there's no proposed code that was put in the packet. It's completely wide open. If it's something that you're interested in, if you'd like, I'd be happy to come back with a draft on what it might look like. But it just depends, I guess, on what you're.
What you want to know, are there 4 of us that are willing to change?
What are you interested in?
So Scott, I support making that change.
Scott, the one question that I do have is the Board of Adjustment was the appeal board for something.
Yeah.
But we've already eliminated that and made that appeal go to the ALJ now, haven't we?
We will have to look at that. It looks like we've got enough votes. We'll make sure that all roads lead appropriately to the ALJ.
It seems like you're just trying to keep up with the times.
Yeah, Patrick's right. I mean, when I talked with my peers and we were kind of chatting about this and that, Board of Adjustments are sort of a dinosaur.
But there's not really any negativity to move forward with that. I'm just trying to think
No.
of any
Salt
things that
Lake's-
we're not thinking
Salt
of.
Lake's done away with their Board of Adjustment years ago.
I mean, we are so hemmed in by LUDMA, by the state law. We really open ourselves up to risk if we dip the toe outside that line. So. Yeah.
Do we have a show of hands?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, looks like we've got it. Thank you.
I'll prepare that. I'll give it to Scott and Alan and We'll circulate it and then bring it back to another work session. So, thank you.
Now let's talk about the clown thing some more.
In the barrel, that's all.
We can take that one straight to a council meeting.
Yeah.
Does that need to be by resolution? Can it?
I don't see you
It's
offending
an ordinance, we
anybody.
gotta change the code.
We have this ordinance, but there's enough support that
Go straight to council
bring
meeting.
it just straight to council and you can refer it back if it needs more.
Business item or public hearing if it has
And
to
that
be,
was
but-
ALJ, not feral clown.
Probably,
Even now my vote.
you know, what it probably needs a public hearing because it's probably a land use. Yeah, I'll work on that with Patrick.
Yeah, as far as process, because I'm just saying, we don't need another committee of the whole on it. All right, next item up for bid is the discussion of a proposed budget amendment for Meadowlark Lane traffic calming.
Ryan has
improvement.
been waiting for this.
Except,
And I've gotten
except
into
it's
it.
the proposal, if you'll notice for the RCA, is the 3 council member at large and the district council member for that particular
You already got your. full-
district, so we already have 4. But the idea is that for the rest of you, is that Meadowlark has been a serious issue. Brian can fill us in on the issue. Those who have not felt familiar with Meadowlark, it's the one that leads into the Garbett homes there at Old Bingham Highway. And Meadowlark is really wide right there, and so it looks like it's a freeway when it's not. And so the 4 of us that proposed the RCA are proposing a budget amendment to take some money out of council contingency. I think the number we put in here was 30K. Take money out of council contingency so that the council can say, we want Meadowlark fixed, here's the money, and it becomes.
Now we know
We'll
what
get to it
happens.
when they get to
And
it.
we'll get to it when we get to it, maybe, but that is that's so that the council can say, yes, we would like to see some action on that particular street taken, and so that's why this discussion is here. Since I was the primary guy in the RCA, I'll lead that.
I had your name on it, so,
Yeah.
nice start. All you wanted to.
Yeah, council, Brian is so excited about this, he offered me up his tribute, so. No, we've been, Brian, his staff and I have been talking about Meadowlark for quite some time. The feedback signs that actually gather data of traffic that goes up and down that road were up for quite a while in gathering that data. They're still up actually. And when we looked at that data, again, the 85th percentile, which is the measurement that both MUTCD and NTSB uses to determine if traffic mitigation is necessary, didn't meet any warrants. But upon looking at the 15th percentile, so the actual, the ones that are speeding, the outliers, they were going the extra mile per hour. Unintended on that one, so by quite a bit. So it was determined that even though the 85th percentile did not warrant traffic mitigation, that we felt that the speeds were high enough that it justified, even if it didn't warrant it, it justified doing something. So that's when staff in the streets engineering department started crafting options. We've got 4 options that we've outlined. And I'm not going to present those tonight unless requested, but suffice it to say, each option builds off of the one previous. So no option actually cancels out anything. So if you start with option 1, you can still go to option 2 if option 1 doesn't result in the results that are intended by it. Only one of those, option number 4, is likely to result in the need for a budget amendment. Correct. So
Permanent chicanes.
yeah. So that is kind of like the last.
You don't want to do a bulb out on the corner or anything?
So that is one of the options, but that's
number 4.
That's number 4.
Yeah, that's number 4. So
We're trying different mitigation issues or calming issues.
I'd like to hear what they are.
Yeah, not as well.
So, yeah, without actually showing them, the first option is actually basically halfway implemented anyway, because it entails a feedback sign. So also,
So the first option is radar feedback signs, which are currently installed, and that's how we collected data, plus Nestor does separate traffic studies in that area on that road. And then to add to option one, there would be striping, put down the sides of the road to narrow the road up, to give it a narrower look to it, so people, it's optical,
Yeah.
visual, right? And secondly, if that's, if we're still experiencing problems, we're gonna be putting in,
Bike refuges.
bike refuges on the side. Third option is to do bollards, plastic bollards, like we have in other areas, and then just paint the bulb outs. And then have the
Bollards
bollards
would
that'll
be-
come out and just to skinny the road up. And fourth would be the permanent chicanes, which is quite costly. So we want to start with each option to see, before we get to the most expensive option, see if these other options will work.
And again, none of the
How long
options,
do you leave an option before you go to the next?
We usually like to collect the traffic data and it's a month roughly is what we, Nestor, when he collects traffic data is about a month.
So they've had the radar for that long at least.
And
So when
yeah,
are we
and they're,
doing-
yeah, a lot longer. than
I know.
that. Yeah.
I was being generous, gentlemen.
But like Paul said, the 85th percentile, there's, it doesn't warrant anything, but 15%.
on
Speeding
above and
like
beyond.
heck.
So when are we moving to the next? When are you getting? the
As
next-
soon as, if we can get temperatures, we've got to meet with the residents and let the, because we want to meet with the residents first. And in between,
Yeah, the options will be presented to the neighborhood.
What does the
And then-
temperature have to be?
we like to go 50 and rising, but paint's different, so we'll try our best to get it down.
So
It's ready to
probably
go.
won't be done until next spring.
So there is option with paint that you can put it down. If you put it down in the winter, you're likely to have to replace it in the
We'll
spring.
just have to refresh it in the spring.
Yeah, so it's not like you
When it's
can't.
colder, if you put it down when it's colder.
Independence Day.
Well, I know, we gotta still meet with the residents, so we gotta go with the residents on this, so we're not just gonna show up and start doing all this stuff.
It seems to me like the residents aren't gonna be happy with anything except speed tables. And we're gonna be
Yeah,
opposed to gonna do that, right? So.
Well, when,
Some of the residents.
Some of the
Oh, I
residents.
said some. Some residents have come to me separately and said, we don't want speed bumps.
Well, and speed tables aren't necessarily the most effective traffic calming measure anyway, for lots of reasons.
Well, and in that. Speed tables are kind of a knee-jerk reaction because that's all we ever used to use, right? Cities, that's all they use, so everyone, I want speed tables, I want speed
I just
tables.
went up Fox Point. Yep, I understand that.
Yep.
But now with MBTCD's changed, it's updated, there's more options for traffic calming. They're much more efficient and cheaper to do.
Protocol. Well, and even on Meadowlark, have we looked at like in the intersection where and put even like, and I hate to say this, and yes, our Bill Baranowski's gonna love me. But, you know, one of the things that does slow is like a chicane is mini traffic circles in an intersection.
Yep.
Because you have to slow and go around, it, right?
Mhm.
Now that requires maintenance, but
It's just painting though, really, I mean, it's.
so I'm.
So we're starting at the low end and working to see if we can mitigate the.
But again, the resident, the meeting with the residents is going to be, the feedback we get from that.
So when
is
do you
going be
plan to do
working.
the meeting with the
So we
residents?
wanted to schedule it after this meeting, so we're gonna present this to you guys.
I think Ariel will work.
Yeah,
So we
Ariel's
can-
gonna start working.
So do we want to go, I guess the question is with this RCA, do we want to move forward and just have the budget amendment ready to go for the mid-year budget in January?
If that's where I was going with this, if we need a budget amendment, then we wait till January to do it.
But we
Give us some
wouldn't
time.
do this now. We would do this with the mid-year budget amendment.
That's what we want.
And we would just say, yeah, we want that so that we can have Denise get that ready for the mid-year budget
But the
amendment.
question is, do you need the money?
Not right now with the stuff, the intermediate stuff we're doing. We could cover that in our operations budget. It's when we have to, is if we do the permanent chicanes, we're gonna have to send that out as a design and that's where
But-
and construct, so.
So my question is, should we, we're talking about using council contingency money, right? Could we do something that says, yes, we're committing the money so that if we need to move it, you need it, you got it, but if not, we can keep it in council contingency? Is there a way to do that, Alan?
There's not really a need to.
Yeah, not something.
And not really, because the budget amendment is how you move it from a department to another department. So once you do the budget amendment, you can't get it back. It's now allocated.
Doing another budget.
You'd have to do a budget amendment to bring
Yeah.
it back.
Then we'd have to do another.
And that'll also allow some time to see what the true cost is gonna be with, if we have to do the permanent chicanes. I don't think $30,000 is gonna cut it.
Doesn't sound like it. You gotta design it and
You
everything.
gotta have it designed, you gotta have it installed.
Process-wise,
Required.
we have a neighborhood traffic management program
Yes.
in the city. Have these people gone through the neighborhood traffic study, all the stuff that's in that neighborhood traffic management? They've got the signatures, they've got the traffic study, they've got.
This one has not, because we chose to just put up those feedback signs.
yes,
by
We
house.
did
Oh, they did?
before.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, they have.
Before you, she did.
okay.
That was my question, because I would hate to see this set a precedent and don't anybody take this personally, but I would hate to have people come to council members and say, my street needs traffic calming, what are you gonna do about it? And we bypass
No,
process.
this had already been.
In fact,
That's what I didn't wanna see happen when I saw this coming.
Councilmember Jacob, we're actually updating the traffic calming plan and it's way more robust and it's a lot
Well,
better.
this is some of my notes is I want to see, yes, if this particular thing didn't meet this, whatever.
Warrants.
Yes, but could we use this as a case study to say, hey, there's other potential places, other roads that have a similar issue that this has that we could use as,
Pilot project.
exactly,
That's
this
a
can
really good idea.
justify
Yeah.
future traffic calming measures and we can kind of assess this and make these better for some, other neighborhoods.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, and again, part of it has come from actually, which is what we want to do is look at the data.
Yeah.
And the data, when we looked at that 15%, again, the speeds were quite high amongst that 15%. More than what you would assume is reasonable. On a road that has an 85th percentile that's not meeting those warrants. Does that make sense?
Yes,
So,
so I want
Have
that
we
data
issued
collection.
citations for speeding?
yes, there's been,
That made any difference?
A little bit, I guess. I haven't talked to her lately, so.
What's the high score?
It's the thing with those signs, right? It's not.
the average of the 15%, I want to say northbound was the highest.
Yeah, northbound, going into the new
And it was like
neighborhood.
45,
Oh,
Wow.
and the southbound 15%, the average was 35. So again, these are,
but
these are the outliers that are, that's why.
But it's based on that perception that Meadowlark is so wide.
Yeah.
It makes it look like a huge fast street,
It's
not
not
a
as a collector
residential.
road.
What it is the main, they made it wider because it's the main road in the subdivision. That's what we used to do back then.
And what it really needs to be is a road going into a subdivision off Old Bingham Highway. It needs to be narrower there as opposed to wider to send the message that you're now in a residential subdivision.
And this could be used for future road planning to not make a road like that as wide.
We've already.
Yeah, no, that doesn't
We've
happen.
already.
That's what I'm just
But I
saying.
like the idea of the painting now, because even if we build those things, at the front, it's still gonna be a wide road once they get past that, and it'll be like a speed bump, slow down.
You gotta have them,
speed up.
you gotta have them every so often.
Again, paint is cheap. I'm not trying to say that, hey, let's waste money and paint it knowing that we're gonna have to repaint it in the spring. But it is less costly,
Yeah.
a lot less costly than a lot of,
I-
especially some of the other options we
It's
have.
not plow that road this winter,
Yeah. What I like,
You're at a different complaint.
what I like is that you have given thought to other elements to come in. Where
Yeah, me, Paul and
so
Nestor,
I
and
appreciate
we've
that.
been looking at all.
Well, and that was part of my thought. I don't know about Kayleen or Bob's, but that was
and Pamela mentioned it, was this could be a really good pilot project for, you know, streets like this one. We know we've had complaints on Lexington, because it's a nice, long, straight street there from 70th South. Who knows where it dead ends into the city, at the end of the city. We have streets like that something like this could be a good pilot. And so that's why we got together and said, let's give you some money if we need it for that pilot to figure this out so that we can solve these problems without lots of cost, but get it down to, you know, without building speed tables that, you know, the fire department hates and the police department hates and Brian's snowplow operators hate.
You'll only kiss the windshield once when you hit one of those, trust me.
Besides Doug Peterson, this was my number one feedback from residents was this road. So that's why I was definitely a part of this. But some of my notes have thankfully been answered is I wanted more details about the traffic calming and I even put bump signage, road narrowing, whatever. I mentioned the long-term planning, this potentially being a pilot program and maybe setting precedents for other areas. You already mentioned the community input, which thankfully that you're already planning on doing. And then I had a thought before, you know, this conversation is since this request utilizes a portion of available contingency funds that potentially exploring some other small scale projects in other high traffic areas that might also benefit from traffic calming if funds still remain. So if we, you know, said, hey, we have this much funds and it didn't use it up and we had identified other areas, I wouldn't mind applying any leftover funds to some of those other areas as well.
Yeah.
As an
Although I don't
option.
think there'll be leftover funds.
No, I don't think there was. It was just, you know.
Yeah, no,
Yeah. And then definitely I want that data collection for future needs and to adjust whatever we need to do in other
Yeah,
problem areas.
we don't do anything until we have the data,
Yeah.
because that really drives what we do. And to your point, Councilmember Bloom, we are doing some similar things on other streets that we're having
Okay.
issues with, moving stop signs and striping and painting. And just because the roads are wide, you think you could speed on them, right? And even with enforcement, it doesn't stop signs.
I like that.
It will be mid-block.
Yeah, there's one releasing ducks every once in a while.
I have a question about those radar signs though, that display your speed. I would think that as an aggregate, they might slow down speed, but for those outliers, I think you're gonna encourage those
Well,
outliers.
so one of the things that those feedback signs are able to do is, because you're right, if you allowed it to go up to 99 miles per hour.
Somebody's gonna try and hit
It's
it.
2 digits, right? So then someone might test it, but there's an ability to have you tap that. So if you want to say, hey, 5 over, all it's gonna do is flash, slow down.
Slow down.
So you don't know, once you get to 40, if it's a 35 mile per hour road, once you get to 40, you don't know how fast.
As a
you're
mid-bill
going.
one,
Yeah, but you look at your
speeding
speedometer.
fast with us.
Yeah,
Brownie face.
Yeah.
right. So
That I see those.
so that's a way to
Like
discourage
one
that.
on Bingham Junction, right out front of Lions Bank Building, yeah.
Or else it's a test.
Slow down
Yeah.
that all the time. They're so big.
I told CNO when I talked to neighbors, I told them that we will continue to work on this until we get those numbers down.
Right.
We're not just going to stick a sign and walk away.
When I talked with you in a separate meeting, you said you're also gonna work on the Dora Lee Drive.
That's the other
That's the
road I
one that
mentioned.
Right,
we're
well,
actually doing
that's
something
So
right
that's
now.
the other road we're working on right now, similar situation. We have put in the radar feedback signs. They're data driven, there's not a speeding issue. But we're doing more than just, okay, there's no speeding issue. The neighbors still think there's a speeding issue. The
Well,
residents.
it's perception.
It's
and that's what we
perception,
need,
and then
yeah.
if you sit on your front porch or you're outside, you see a car, looks like it's speeding by, it's perception again, most of the time they're.
Nobody
They're
can
going
speed,
faster
nobody
than
can
what-
speed in front of my house, luckily.
So anyway, we're gonna stripe, then there's a two-way stop. We're gonna stripe to narrow up the road, and then there's a two-way stop for mid-road, mid-block. We're gonna turn that into a four-way stop. That on Dora Lee.
And that's really, and in all honesty, all we can do is set things because people who are gonna speed are going to speed and we can just only do a certain amount of things and.
And the police have been, when we send them, because we work closely with the police, we send them the data if there is an issue, and they've been great to enforce it. And they've been awesome to work with, so.
These radar feedback signs actually send the information to the web and Nestor downloads it. and
Download
those-
This is something I've never seen before, but I know in construction sites, they do a fines double for speeding in construction zones. Can we set up other zones to do that very same thing?
There's that, are we handcuffed by?
I
the
don't know,
state?
I just, that's something I've never even heard of before.
Just put out some more arrows and call it.
I don't think.
Yeah, just,
Maybe that's-
can you do some construction
There
there?
has to be a mitigating
Do you need
reason.
us to pass a
Find stuff in
resolution that the
neighborhoods.
following streets are under construction?
But anyway, I'm just, that's something I
Could
never
lower the
thought of
speed
before
limit.
until just now.
Is that
so
an
I thought I
option?
might as well.
Yeah, that is an option.
What Salt Lake City did and changed the speed limits to 20.
Yeah, we could do that. I'm not opposed.
But it didn't work.
No, it didn't. Except for tickets would be higher.
No. Yeah, but people just get used to.
You know, there's no speeding on 13th West right now.
We'll do that.
I think what we've heard is you're working on it, you'll come back to us with solutions, and if we need a budget amendment, we can talk
Yep.
about it.
Yeah, give us some time to get more data, get some things installed.
Likely with
You're
these,
saying a message that we want.
Right, but I think they're on it.
if the result of the resident meeting is that we proceed with option one, there will be a waiting period after that where we take the data.
Right.
After it's
Just
done.
let us know
So
when
this will
the,
be a process, if that's where it starts. If the resident feedback is overwhelmingly that they want to go with one of the other options, then it could get closer to a potential possible budget amendment request. in the
let us know when you're gonna have the. rest of the-
Procedurally, we just leave this RCA. Hey, so I think procedurally, Alan, can we just table this? Should we just table this RCA?
Just consider it table until we.
We
decide.
consider it tabled, and then if we need to, we can recall it. We can untable it, whatever the procedural motion is.
We ask that you, let us know when the neighborhood meeting is,
Yeah.
and then B, follow up with that, what resulted. How many attended, what they had to share. Is it just 2 people that attend? Is it 30?
Yeah, well, that's why I wanna know what it is. right?
But it will be scheduled, not for
Or
our
your schedule,
schedule,
that's-
so,
You're right.
You may not.
yeah, if we're available, we can come, but if we're not, I'd like to know the outcome.
Has there been any talk of doing a neighborhood meeting with Doralee?
That one, we talked about it, but we decided to just proceed with the striping and the sign.
Oh, yeah.
In Doralee, I think there's more emotions between neighbors. I don't want to get them mad at each other.
Where's Doralee at?
It's on the neighborhood.
In Kent's neighborhood.
800 west.
No,
600 south.
That's her sister.
Ah,
All right.
Sarah Lee's sister.
Sarah Lee's.
All right, anything else, anything else on this one?
No, I think we're good on that. Again, I appreciate the, the thoughts you put into other things. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
This item, as it's written on here, I don't think is quite the right summary, but discussion regarding strategies to address affordable housing. Maybe a nice pie in the sky way of addressing it, but let's talk about it. You got council members Green and Whitelock. Probably the last one. Do you want to lead this one?
Sure. I attended a ton of my classes at ULCT, and it was about affordable housing and ways to get there. And a graphic that they had showed carport. And it made me start thinking, because I've been trying to brainstorm ways that we as a city can put something out there to say, this is what West Jordan is doing to try to help with affordable housing. And so I looked at it and I realized that homes built in the 50s, most of them just had carports. Then move up to the 80s, when my neighborhood was put in. And I have to share that when people complain about interest rates, I kind of roll my eyes because interest rates were 13 plus when I bought my home, but we got some special one, so it was only 9 7/8. So it was a real bargain.
First house.
Yeah, they were really high. And in my
Thanks,
neighborhood,
Carter.
many of the homes were built
It was.
with carports. Our home wasn't because we had to hit a certain dollar amount on our home to qualify for that low interest rate. So we have we have a garage
You had to hit like 35,000?
a little higher than that.
37.8.
100% more than that. We needed to be at 69, really was our magic
What would
number.
that be like?
Can you imagine?
But anyway,
69.
the concern that I've had from community feedback when I've inquired is, well, yeah, but what will that do? Well, what it did in my neighborhood and what it still does is those that haven't converted their carports into garages, well, they actually park on their carport. They park their cars underneath there because
Because you can't fill it with stuff.
exactly. So I don't really see a negative that would come from this. And I'd really like to be able to put something out there. Because I think, in my opinion, home ownership is vitally important to individuals, to gain wealth, and to our communities to have stability. And if we keep going away from that and using other mechanisms, I just don't think they accomplish the same thing as someone having a piece of land that isn't connected to other. Their home is just theirs, with their land is just theirs. I think it creates a different environment. And I think this could be one thing that I don't see a financial cost to the city, but I can see a construction cost, especially after having visited Lowe's to do a craft project and buying wood that I haven't purchased for many years and about died. When I got the wood out of the 50% off pile and took it up, and she said that 1x4 was $16. We'll just say it was $16. For a crooked piece of wood. But so I don't have an idea what the difference is between really a carport and a garage, but I assume it's at least $10,000-15,000 that they could save.
Well, this can cater also to different demographics. It will offer smaller homes. It can appeal to young professionals, to single parent families, and even older adults who would like to downsize. Smaller homes would have, without mandatory garages, would have environmental benefits, reduced land use, reduced surface area, and potentially reducing stormwater runoff. So there's some potentials right there. Construction costs are a huge factor in these home prices, so removing that garage requirement could make a significant, as long as we've got good developers who significant difference for those lower and middle income residents. And I would also consider maybe we do something like a pilot policy that could be reevaluated in a few years to see how it is impacted or not impacted and how it's affected affordability and community satisfaction. And then I'd also look at potentially reviewing some other zoning or building code requirements that could be adjusted to further support affordable housing without compromising community standards. So those are my notes.
So here's a couple of my thoughts, and probably not too far along with what you'd like to say. I actually would be okay. I think if you drive down, you drive through downtown Salt Lake City, back when that was zoned, or not downtown Salt Lake City, east side of Salt Lake City, 13th East area particularly. When you're driving from Sugar House to the University of Utah down towards East High School, you look at the number of homes in that area. A lot of them don't have garages attached. The garages are in the back.
Yep.
They built the detached garage later. And if you think about a detached garage, it could have an ADU on the top, but part of my thought was, one, do we want to eliminate garages completely? Or a second thing may be requirement for garage. But the thing that I'm also wondering to help it with the housing affordability is narrow the bulk standard. Currently under the R18, I think the bulk standard is 85 feet wide. I'm pretty somewhere in there, we're 85 feet, right? If we drop that to even 60, and you have a driveway, and the driveway from front to back has to be at least 22 feet or 44 feet. And you have a driveway with a carport or just a driveway. With the long. Part of the problem that I see right now in West Jordan is we've got some of these super nice houses. And they can't even park an RV on the side of their house because they can't get down the side of it. Because we've, well, right, but we have issues where you can't get down the side of your house. And so I'm wondering, would it make more sense for affordable housing as well to narrow the bulk standard? I love the idea of eliminating the garage requirement and going to carports. Do we want to eliminate the garage requirement completely? Would we want to narrow, and think about this, would we want to narrow the bulk standards narrower? Same size lot, 8,000 square foot lot, but it's narrower. It makes the front yard smaller, less landscape required, less water use required, allows in the backyard more of the water-wise compartmented areas in the back. You could have a garage or a parking spot or those kind of things. Neighborhood's a little bit skinnier, makes it more walkable, those kind of things. And so as part of, if we're looking at some of the affordability issues, does narrowing the bulk standard and making it less walkable, makes it less street maintenance, right? You've got that, and it puts more of the yard in the back where people can use it instead of the front that becomes useless and increases water. So that was my thought along with this as well.
So, could I clarify? Sorry.
You can come up to the table.
Let me just talk. This assumes a couple of, now, for the most part, I like reducing regulations and letting the market dictate what they do. Because I think what this, in as much as this relates to affordable housing, which I don't really think it does, there's advantages, there's disadvantages, all these things. That would, the assumption that would have to be true for these conclusions to be true is that currently narrower lots, townhomes, older houses without garages are affordable. They're not, right? For the most part. So making more houses that are that way may or may not make houses affordable, but regardless of that. It's also kind of assumes that city regulations are why houses are built with garages, not because that's what people are demanding. People are demanding houses with garages.
That's all that's being offered.
Well, that may be, but why?
But we require
Is it
We
that-
required it.
We do.
right, but did we require the garage? Well, there was still demand for carports? Or did we require the garage once demand for carports kind of went
Let me call
away and it just
Chris.
kind of got built in? Chris and
Did two car garage? Oh,
I just make a short point. My father built homes as a general contractor in the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. He built hundreds and hundreds of starter homes here in Salt Lake County. Probably 99% of which did not have garages. And I think it's a direction, we need to go back and find our roots. And if this could knock $25,000 off the price of a house.
it's like we elected Kamala Harris.
Why not give builders that option?
Go ahead, Scott.
Still their choice to build them that way or
Well,
not.
and some of, when you go into a new development and people go in to build it, they can choose the plan and they could have an option as a no garage option as well as a garage option within that development as well.
Yeah.
well, Kent, you're right. When my parents built the house that I grew up in over in Midvale and Second West, in that area, a bunch of houses were built without carports.
Most of it.
A lot of them weren't built with garages. My mom and dad's house wasn't built with a carport or a garage. We had the driveway that went down the side so that we could get to the backyard, and that's where we parked. And then eventually we put a carport in the backyard to park. And that was traditional in a lot of neighborhoods 40 or 50 years ago. And I think the question is, we've required garages
At least 25 years.
at least, and we always hear.
Two car or one car?
We've always heard, we always hear, whether it's true or not, city regulations cause increased housing costs and stuff. If the market wants to build a two-car garage, if that's what sells for Ivory or for Peterson or for Liberty, build it. But I think where Kayleen is talking about going and where I'm talking about going is if we take some of these regulations off, they can't complain about us and us being a barrier to affordable housing. And that's partly where I want to go, is to say, we took that barrier off and look what you keep building. Or we took that barrier off and house costs, it's not the city I want to be able to say it's not the city regulations that are causing the increased housing.
This is why I want to, consider this as a proposal, as a pilot policy that we reevaluate too. So once we change it, we can always just go back and say, this isn't working. Let's go back to where we were. Like, we don't have to make it permanent either.
Scott, do you have any idea why they went to two-car garage? I mean, 25 years
I think
before you too, but.
it's image, it's aesthetics. I wasn't right on here 25 years ago, but there is a cost, and I think it does have an impact on the image of a community. Now, we have.
Can I interrupt you for a second, Scott?
But apartments have carports.
I was helping build houses when that kind of made that change. And a lot of the feedback that I heard is neighbors didn't like people storing their stuff in their carport or on the side of their house when they didn't have a garage.
Yeah, I get that, but there also wasn't a price issue back then.
No, you're right. And then they pushed the cities to put that requirement in there. And most builders were doing it anyway. My first house that I was talking about, that they tore out specifically, they didn't have a carport or a garage. I was the only house on the street that did. All the rest did because both people wanted it for the garages. So that's exactly what we're doing. And the house I grew up in didn't either. It does now. So I think Utah League of Cities and Towns is looking at this to take it back because they're looking for something they can take. So I'm really happy about this discussion. They can take back to the legislators. What the Utah League of Cities and Towns input they're getting from other cities is if they take the garage requirement off, they want to leave for the option of adding a garage later.
Absolutely.
Make sure
Yeah,
there's a spot they can put a garage in.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the narrow setbacks with the longer yard, because that sets aside a place for a detached garage in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So-
like that.
So we have in West Jordan sort of a case study already. We have Ochre Shadows and Dixie Valley that were built in the county, right? Before it was
Our house
annexed into
in
the city.
78
Yeah,
with
and
a carport.
we have a lot of code enforcement calls come from those areas. And many are directly tied to carports and storing stuff outside. What the mayor was talking about. We also, from the planning perspective, we were talking about variances in Board of Adjustment earlier today. And many of the variances that we have approved or had to approve come from Ochre Shadows and Dixie Valley, where they're converting the carports and enclosing them into garages. And they don't meet the setbacks because they don't. And so we don't want to deny them a common right. And so a variance is granted. And so we've approved many of those over the years.
And here's my other argument. when garages weren't mandatory, there also weren't HOAs. As much as I can't stand HOAs are a part of life and they're gonna be a big part of whether people are putting stuff outside in their carport or not.
That's good.
That's true.
Someone asked about the cost of garages. There's a lot of variables, but I've talked to our building department and it ranges, right? This is basically 5 to maybe 7% of a home cost. It's the cheapest part of the home to build. Depends on how you trick it out. But a follow-up question for you, Councilmember Whitelock. Are you advocating that we require carports?
I
Or-
would still like a carport. Other council members don't
I-
want to
I
see
would
that.
say-
Calvin suggested having a deeper lot that would allow for a detached garage.
We talked about that,
And
the
have more
development off of
bungalow
13th,
style
right?
house,
Narrower lots.
those can be really beautiful.
Yeah, I
And you
agree.
you look at the way,
I guess what I'll say is we need off-street parking. We live in Utah and we can't have, so there has to be off-street parking.
Strongly agree.
yes.
How we
And-
get to that,
That's why I'm okay with narrow ones with the driveway that goes all the way back, because it gives you plenty of off-street parking. Probably actually more in some respects than a two-car garage that blocks the house, because you can only get 4 parking spots that if you were able to drive down the side of your house, heck, you could get 3, 4, 5 cars and then pull off to the side, maybe even get some more. So, you know, that's where I'm looking at flexibility of land use.
I agree with
Those
that.
those kinds of things. If we required a carport, I don't think it has to be an attached carport. I'd say, if we want to have, you have to have covered parking.
I would even have that. I would just say. leave it
I
up-
would
leave it up
wanna
to the-
have a
There's 2
requirement, yeah.
off-street parking
I don't
spaces.
think we need to
So,
require.
Let me be devil's advocate here, because I grew up in Dixie Valley. All of those homes, some of them have added on, all those homes were built with room for 2 cars. One in the carport, one behind it. So if we go to a 1 carport home, there's gonna be more on-street parking, because those builds are only built enough for 2 cars to park.
Right now, we're doing 4 something.
Well, I
Two in the garage.
If you get 2 garage, you've got 2 in the garage, and you've got 4 spots.
That's why I said 4.
Yeah.
4 spots, but usually only 2 can be parked on.
Well, we can't make people park in the garage, obviously.
That's why I don't think a garage is needed because
Well, I'm just saying the carport's not gonna solve the
And
problem.
I've got friends who took their garage and turned it into the
the
dining.
problem I'm trying to solve is to decrease housing costs.
Well, it's funny, because when this came up, I saw a home for sale in Taylorsville. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet, 450,000.
No garage.
That's used, that's not a new.
No garage. 1,400 square feet with a carport.
But
So-
450
Taylorsville,
but
that's 50 years old.
450 is almost affordable.
Is it?
And well, given our affordable housing numbers, 80% AMI, 450 is almost affordable.
It's AMI.
Average
Average
median.
median. I
What
know
do
what
we?
it stands for.
It's
So, for the
out right
record.
now. What is it out right now?
Oh.
What's the AMI for West Jordan, about 78?
I'd have to look at the latest report we sent to the state. I don't.
I was gonna say, it's someplace in the neighborhood of 75 to 80.
So what do we want? What's the consensus? What do we want to ask staff to do?
I'll weigh in and say I'm personally in favor of reducing regulation and letting the market decide.
me too.
I don't think it's gonna actually go anywhere in the market, but it's,
Hey, this, Scott, I'm thinking of a novel idea here. Pilot project wise. Would it be, the way to address this would be to create a form-based zone that basically says, here's your minimum width and minimum lot size. Come in and design this and tell us how you want it to design, and it doesn't have to include garages or anything, and see if, is that a better way to look at it? Instead of modifying certain things, would it be better just to create like a form-based code that says we'll look at that in a residential area so that we can use it. I'm just spitballing.
Developers like certainty, they like predictability. I think they would not use the tool if it's too obscure. With a few keystrokes, we can get rid of the regulation of a two-car garage across all residential zones.
But I also like where Councilmember Green's going about reviewing some of the other zoning or building codes, whether it's setbacks and
Yeah,
things like that as well.
If that's I got 4 votes, we can look at the lot and bulk standards.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Jump the standards.
1, 2, 3. Corbin's raising his
Clarifying
hand.
question?
Yeah.
Sorry. In the lead up to this conversation, I thought it was just about removing this on infill projects. What I'm hearing, I just want some clarification for the staff. Are you talking about removing the two garage requirement for infill projects or as an overlay zone or in certain spots? Are you talking about removing the 2-car garage requirement citywide? Because those are really different things.
It is.
The original RCA had. It was infill.
I wrote that in my notes, but then I figured it was more of a
Okay, just
citywide.
keeping it with infill for now.
Yeah, as a start.
So the infill ordinance or the infill.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does make a good pilot.
Any infill, not the infill ordinance, but we're talking about the houses that are filling in the blanks as opposed to the big one out.
I'll have to look to see if we've got a definition for infill, because if not.
You may have to write 10
Yeah.
or 15 acres, 20 acres or less.
Surrounded by.
We'll look at that and bring it back to the council.
All has something.
You might have an issue with infill though, in that if you have a existing neighborhood that has a vacant lot and you're gonna put a house on that without a garage and all the rest of the houses have garages. you
Yeah,
have an
the
issue.
neighborhood character.
Right, and so whereas if it's new neighborhoods, then you know
It's not compatible.
that's something that's possible before you get into that neighborhood.
Well, and with the new neighborhoods, and I kind of mentioned that before, where when you're building something, you do have options from like 4 or 5 different plans when you
Right.
choose. And some without garage, some with garage, but they would kind of already match because it would be part of the neighborhood character, whether you have garage or not.
And if you're buying a house, you already know it's a possibility. Your next door neighbor
Exactly, so
may
that's
have a
one
garage.
thing I would like to see potentially, because it keeps the neighborhood character, but the person buying the house has that option.
I think that, I know where you're going, is that I think, Scott, that's easy to say this applies to a development that's X number of acres and it can't just be one lot in the middle of a current neighborhood. I think that's easy to.
I appreciate that clarification, Court, because I was going full on changing every zone.
I was thinking of making it citywide.
I would have been fine citywide, yeah.
But how do we prevent one-offs then?
But is it a big deal one-offs? Because you can do a one-off and still match the neighborhood character.
Well, you don't prevent the one-off. If we're gonna open the Pandora's box, let's open it, and see what happens. I mean,
I'm
if
okay with
you're
that.
gonna, if we're gonna play with this, let's play with it, see what happens. I mean, if it goes totally sideways and we start getting things that we're gonna wanna reconsider, we bring it back and we go, guys, this wasn't the best option.
Yeah, but if there's a weirdo
I-
psycho house in the middle of a nice neighborhood,
They still have to go through all the committees and design review and all of that.
Not for single family.
Not for
homes.
single families, really?
No.
Is there any guardrails we can put on that?
But here's the thing, though, now we start saying, well, what about these negative effects that might come from this in
That's
X, Y,
what
or
we
Z
need to figure
case?
out.
Then we start putting guardrails in and now we've totally torpedoed the point of this,
Yeah.
right? The point of this was to open it up and let's see what we
We can
get.
still open it up and have guardrails.
Right, but once you start building those guardrails back in, now you're just replacing affordability A problem with affordability B problem, if affordability is actually what you're impacting. Which I don't think you are.
But again, a big part of this is reevaluating this as well.
But you know what, here's my thought. Scott, you've got a group of reasonably smart people that work for you, that have done this for a long time.
Mhm.
You know, between Ray and Larry and Mark
I was
and
giving it-
everybody and you and everybody. I venture to bet that you can, you know, like we were talking about, you have to have covered parking. That helps maintain the character, but it, you know, so what I'm thinking is can you as a staff take what you've heard tonight? In general, eliminate regulations, try to reduce some regulations to reduce house costs. And see what you can come up with in, as the professionals, and then give us some ideas. Based on what you've heard tonight.
I'm hearing two different camps though.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing infill versus full on citywide.
I'm citywide, but I can go with either.
Can I see citywide?
I would do
One,
it,
two,
I would do it everywhere. And if we're gonna do it, let's do it.
or with some guardrails, some parameters. How are you more
I'd be
comfortable with
interested in
that?
citywide as long as we have some guardrails to protect current homeowners in established neighborhoods.
So here's my thought on the whole infill.
It's the opposite of it.
We're talking about affordable housing. And typically the people that do infill are people that are buying their second home or making their second home. So it's not really gonna make affordable housing on infill. So that's why I'm kind of leaning toward what you guys are saying, make it citywide, because I don't think it's gonna help infill affordable housing.
And I think if you're talking about existing neighborhoods, infill is the opposite of what you want. You don't want, infill is by definition in an existing neighborhood, right? Or bordering an existing neighborhood. So if it's, if it's only for new development projects that are not in,
My concern is like what Scott said, is if there's an empty lot in a developed neighborhood, and the owner of that lot finally decides to build, and every house in the neighborhood has got 2 or 3 car garages. And now this one house doesn't have a garage.
I think it's gonna ruin the neighborhood.
Well, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate here.
Uh-oh.
What would happen, let's say that you've got your choice of building a garage that's required or adding an extra 400 square feet for your
Theater room.
for your theater, for your kid, your mom, those kind of things. And you couldn't afford the house to build the house that you want with the garage, but if you don't have to build the garage, you're not trading off. You're trading off garage and square footage. You see what I'm saying? And I'm wondering if that helps us get the affordability better by not forcing the garage. And
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Here's another thing to just consider too, is something, I think it was Keelan who said it. He said, now we can show the state that it's not the city's regulations that would hang up.
Yeah.
But so if for that to be one of the goals. of this discussion, say something like, if we say something like, we're eliminating the garage requirement in these specific, only certain cases, but with these specific parameters, you're not gonna make a splash. You're not reducing your regulations. You're just exchanging. Right? You're gonna take away the garage requirement, now you've gotta do this, or whatever. If we eliminated the garage requirement in exchange for off-street parking as a definition, instead of a garage. That's something you can go to the news with, and West Jordan City is doing something awesome. They're getting rid of the garage requirement for houses in an attempt to help housing affordability. That's a story. That's something that nobody else is doing. That's like when Riverton eliminated business license. Well, they got all this press coverage because wow, they got eliminated. What's that?
Said, which you're still a fan of doing.
I'm still a fan.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's something that does that will get the attention of a legislator or two, or 75.
Mayor, did we ever find and figure out where that neighborhood was where we went to where they remodeled that house?
Yeah, just south of the
Post office.
Cause I don't think any of the homes there had garages.
They did, it's single family.
Single car.
Single family garages?
United often too.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, cause I certainly don't remember.
They're small, they had that small footprint
But
and.
they, but most of them were in the back, weren't they?
No, they're front
Were
facing.
they
Yeah.
on the front?
And parking in that neighborhood is really difficult because the lots are more narrow. And
Right.
every time you get the car in there because they have a driveway and.
But that's why I'm in favor of deep lots.
Yes, I was just trying to remember if that place had.
It did have a,
I knew the houses are small.
some of the
so I didn't think
garages
they
they
had
had
two-car
converted to
garages.
rooms because there's really small square footage, but they came with the garage originally.
Yeah, a lot of them, I know a lot of houses, my sister-in-law lived in a house where they converted the garage into an ADU.
Yeah, that's,
They rented out the apartment. The garage.
And that house doesn't have a garage now because they did convert it. But it has a garage door.
Friends, family,
Right.
converted their garage to the dining room. Sat on the side of the
that's what I was
house.
remembering, that it was something very bizarre with that. The garage was their kitchen now.
They took the single car garage to the dining room. And built a garage on the front of it. So there's, things happen.
So,
Okay.
So
no,
I think,
no.
I haven't had a discussion yet, but I think if we're gonna, my opinion is if we're gonna do it, let's do it.
Let's look at citywide and
Citywide.
just see.
Let's do this.
Good city.
So anyway, you got 4.
We have 4.
Yeah.
Which,
I like the citywide.
Yeah.
And should we look at other things like lot and bulk standards as
Yes,
well?
I
Do
would
we
like
have
that.
enough?
Because it might fix the parking issue.
Right.
I'm fine looking at it. The more regulations you reduce, I'm generally happier with that and let the market.
That would be
decide.
more, yeah, okay.
I still,
I think
don't
that was a bigger cost savings, honestly.
have a
Less,
rush.
less
I'm not-
infrastructure in front of somebody's house is gonna
Yeah.
reduce the total cost of construction way more than a two-car
I
garage.
can't think of one developer in this county that would build a house with a carport right now.
I know, I don't, that's what I'm saying, is I don't think there's gonna be a big rush till I go, oh my God, let's go build, let's do it.
So if the
But the
press
bulk
and the
standards
legislation.
with
gets it,
infrastructure might.
it Could,
You would have developers taking advantage of that.
yeah.
So take a look at that.
Just eliminate all potential unintended consequences.
Do my best.
Pull up your fiscal.
With my kind of sort of smart people.
Yeah, I'm with you. But I
You're really
wouldn't buy a house that didn't have the garages, but I also like.
We have some-
choices.
We have some developments like, we have some developments that have large entitlements and affordable housing requirements under their current entitlements. You change this or you allow it, does that allow? Does that allow?
They have their entitlements.
Their entitlements are tied to existing MDA, so that's already, this would not apply to those
They
kind
would
of
have to
projects.
reapply. They would have to reapply under the new code.
Could somebody like a Jones Ranch apply this to a new village where they haven't?
A new phase.
No, they've already been entitled.
Oh, they've already been.
Their entitled, no, because their entitlement said, we're gonna give you a general entitlement, but your specifics are coming in chunks. We call them villages, right?
Depends on how we word it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we wanna take a massive step toward deregulating. I love it.
I'd like that put on the record. Councilmember Jacob loves something Kayleen did.
It's like 3, okay?
And I wouldn't mind once we get closer in the process doing a press release.
Well, we'll put Maria on it.
Get Maria on it.
Yeah.
Well, I might add that the house I have now is a 2-car garage. And I wish it was a 3-car garage.
You know what, Dirk? I wish my garage was a 4. We've actually talked about building the garage in the back to put the cars in because the garage out front is full of stuff. So, yes.
So another thing this will do is it'll be a boon to the self-storage
You just
industry.
build a.
The what?
shed.
Self-storage industry.
Self-storage industry.
You know, you're still gonna have a garage.
You can park in your driveway. That's what I ended up having.
Which means more tax dollars for the city. Look at that.
Steps and everything out of the garage. This tough
People
day.
to pay.
And they're like, oh yeah, I guess we could have done
Cheaper to
that.
pay
Yeah.
Eventually, it's
the
like
garage.
it's like a stage in a park. Eventually that line will cross.
I hate scraping windows. I bought a blanket to put over it.
Well,
Right.
Bath and Body will be closing soon.
Still open? What's
I know.
still
What's
open?
left?
Bath and Body.
Oh,
They have a sale.
is new Blue Bunny ice cream open?
Alright, are we done? Jack, are we done?
I think we're done. Are we done? Anybody else got anything else?
We're done.
I think you can declare us adjourned and nobody's gonna object.
That sounded like a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.